Chosen one, I want to start with something you already know but may have stopped believing. You have been carrying something that most people around you cannot fully see. Not because they do not care, but because what you are carrying exists at a depth that ordinary language does not reach. The weight of the quiet, the cost of the persistence, the faithfulness of showing up when showing up felt like walking through water. That weight has been witnessed, not by anyone who could fix it, by the one who stands above every force that has ever tried to hold you down. And here is what I need you to understand before we go any further. In the realm where the final word about your life is held in the court, where nothing of true significance goes unrecorded, something happened recently that does not happen often. The King of all things rose from his seat. A seated king is present, a standing king is responding. When God moves from rest to standing, it is not a casual gesture, it is a declaration. The entire host of heaven registered what it meant, and in that moment, that specific, unrepeatable moment, they went silent. Not because something terrible was approaching, because you were being answered at the highest level there is. You are not here by chance. Something carried you to this message the same way that weight was carried quietly, specifically, on purpose. Stay close. Now, before I tell you what God stood up to do, before I explain what the silence of the angels actually means for your life right now, I need to ask you something first. Have you been noticing things that are difficult to explain? Not dramatic things, quiet things, things that happen in the in-between moments of your day. Because if you are in the season I believe you are in, there are signs already present in your experience that most people would walk right past. But you are not most people. And I think if I name them, something in you is going to recognize exactly what I am talking about. The first one is this: emotional waves that arrive without a clear reason. You are going about your ordinary day and something moves through you. Grief or peace or a longing so specific you cannot name what it is reaching for, and there is no trigger for it. Nothing happened, no memory surfaced, no conversation set it off, it simply arrived. I need you to hear this. That is not instability, that is not anxiety. That is your spirit processing weight that your mind has not yet been given language for. Something is shifting in you at a level beneath thought, and the waves are the evidence. The second sign is that your tolerance has changed. Places you used to go without thinking now feel suffocating. Conversations that used to feel normal now feel like they cost you something. You have pulled back from things you cannot fully explain, and part of you has wondered if something is wrong with you for feeling that way. Nothing is wrong with you. You are simply becoming more sensitive to what belongs in your next season and more aware of what does not. The third sign is a restlessness that does not feel like anxiety. It feels like the hum of something approaching, not dread, not panic, more like standing in a room and sensing that the door is about to open, even though you cannot hear footsteps yet. That restlessness is not a problem to solve, it is an indicator something is coming. Your spirit registered it before your mind did. If you are watching this and those three things are already resonating, I want to tell you something. What I am about to share in this video is specifically for where you are right now, not where you hope to be, not where you were a year ago, here. This specific intersection of your life. By the time this video ends, you are going to understand why God stood up, what it means for the season you are walking through, what the three areas of your life that are currently being reorganized actually look like, and what to do with the activation that has already begun in you. I am not going to waste your time. Stay until the end. What is waiting there belongs to you. Now the fourth sign. Your dreams have changed. Not necessarily that you are dreaming more, but that the dreams feel different, more vivid, more directional. Like they are carrying information rather than just processing the day. You wake up and something from the dream stays with you in a way it did not before. You cannot always decode it, but you feel the weight of it. And the fifth sign, And this one, I want you to hold carefully, is the sense that you are standing at a threshold. Not that you have crossed it, not that you can see the other side, but that you are standing at an edge, and something in you knows that the ordinary rules of your life are about to shift. You cannot manufacture that feeling. It is not wishful thinking. It is a spiritual coordinate. These 5 things together are not random. They are not a coincidence of timing. They are pointing to something I want you to see. Before I show you what God has been watching, before I tell you what moved him from seated to standing, I want to ask you something that I think will reframe everything that follows. What did you do with the wilderness? I do not mean what happened to you in it. I mean, what did you do with it? Because here is what I have come to understand. There are people who go through hard seasons and come out the other side the same shape they went in, thinner, harder, more guarded. And there are people who go through the same territory and come out carrying something that was not there before, something formed, something irreversible. You are the second kind. And the throne room has been watching the entire time. This is what the world missed about your last season. What the world looked at and called stagnation, the throne room looked at and called formation. What the world looked at and called invisible, the throne room looked at and called incubation. What the world could not quantify, those quiet acts of faithfulness, the decisions made in the dark with no audience, the times you chose the higher road when no one would have blamed you for choosing the easier one. None of that was lost, not one moment of it. There is a picture I want to give you. The eagle does not fight the air. It does not exhaust itself flapping against the wind. It finds the current, the invisible thermal rising beneath it, and it rises without effort. Not because the wind stopped blowing, because the eagle learned to position itself in relationship to the current that was already moving. Your wilderness was not still air, it was preparation. You were being positioned. Think about David. He was anointed in a field, surrounded by sheep, when no one thought to call him in from the pasture. Samuel arrived to choose a king from among Jesse's sons, and David was not even at the table. He was outside doing the ordinary work of an ordinary morning, and yet the throne room had already made its decision. God saw a king where people saw a shepherd boy. The anointing came before the palace. The declaration came before the recognition. The preparation happened while the world was looking elsewhere. You have been David in the field, chosen one. The anointing did not wait for the palace. It came to you in the ordinary, in the unseen, in the season that looked nothing like what was being built. And now I want to show you the second layer of this, because what I just described, the wilderness, the formation, the hidden preparation, that is only part of the picture. The part that changes everything is what happened on heaven's side of it. In ancient scripture, there is a word, a Hebrew word. The word is kum. It appears at the most critical moments in sacred history, when the wilderness was too long and a people needed proof of divine movement, cum, when a deliverer was being called out of hiding, cum, when a king was being elevated before the world had any record of it, cum, rise, stand, move, cum, chosen one, over your season. And this is what I want you to understand about that. In the court of heaven, in the way the unseen realm has always operated, when the king rises, it means something has been settled. A decision has been finalized, not considered, not reviewed. Finalized. What follows that standing is not deliberation, it is declaration. Every prayer you prayed into apparent silence, it was received. Every morning you got up when staying down made more sense, it was recorded. Every time you chose faith when fear had better evidence, when the facts argued against the hope, when you kept going because something deep in you could not quit, even when your mind was ready. To every single one of those moments is written in a place where nothing is lost. And I hear the Spirit saying over you now, I saw every moment of your silence. I counted every step you took when your faith was the only thing keeping you moving. Not one prayer fell to the ground unanswered. They were being held, and the answer is being prepared in a form larger than what you originally asked for. That is not poetry. That is the architecture of how divine faithfulness operates. Now I want to stay here for a moment, because what I am about to tell you next is the part of this message that I think you most need to hear before we go further. And I want to make sure you are ready to receive it rather than just hear it. You might be sitting with this and thinking, this is a beautiful message, but is it actually for me? Because you know what the last season looked like from the inside. You know the doubt that visited you in ways you have not told anyone. You know the moments when you questioned everything, your choices, your faith, your direction, your worth. I am not going to minimize that. Those questions are real. And here is what I want you to understand about them. The fact that you kept going while carrying those questions is not a small thing. It is not ordinary faithfulness, it is extraordinary faithfulness. And extraordinary faithfulness does not go unanswered. There is one more thing I want to come back to before we go into what is actually being reorganized in your life right now. There is a frequency, scientists now call it the genius state, that was placed in you at birth and that has been waiting, in many ways, to be fully reactivated. I am going to come back to this later in the video, because when I explain what it is and what it does, I think it is going to connect some things for you that have not yet had language. Hold that, because right now what I want to turn to is this: the 3 areas of your life that God stood up to reorganize, and what is specifically shifting in each one. Now let me show you what is actually shifting in your life right now, because God did not stand up to observe, He stood up to reorganize. And the reorganization is already in motion across 3 areas that matter most. The first area is your relationships. And I want you to hear this gently, because it may be one of the more tender parts of this message. Some people you thought would be here with you for the next chapter, they will not be. Not because something went wrong, not because of failure on either side, but because the season that is coming requires a different kind of company than the season you are leaving. You will feel it before you can explain it. A quiet pulling back, a growing distance that no single conversation created. And when it happens, when those exits come, you are going to be tempted to hold on, to explain yourself, to close the gap. Do not. What is leaving has served its purpose in your story. And the moment you stop trying to hold open what is already closing, you will notice something remarkable. There is space now. Space that was not there before. And into that space, people who speak your language are coming. Not people you have to translate yourself for. Not people who require constant management of their feelings about your growth. People who recognize what you carry and are not threatened by it. Trust the exit, trust the arrival. Both are orchestrated. The second area is your purpose. And this is the one I most want to be careful with, because I do not want to give you false specificity. So let me say this as accurately as I can. The clarity you have been waiting for, the clear sense of direction, the articulate calling, the moment where it all clicks into a plan, that clarity will not arrive as a document, it will arrive as a pull. A gravitational pull towards something that makes very little logical sense and yet feels more true than anything else you have considered. Your job is not to map it before you move. Your job is to move in the direction of the pull and let the map reveal itself as you walk. For those entering this season, what felt like confusion was not the absence of direction. It was the presence of something too large to be contained in a single decision. The purpose is not smaller than you thought, it is larger. And the reason it felt unclear is because you were trying to hold an ocean in a cup. The cup was the problem, not the ocean. The third area is provision. And by that I mean the resources, the opportunities, the connections, the material support that your next assignment requires. I want to say something about this that I think will bring relief. The provision will not arrive before the assignment, it will arrive with it, almost simultaneously. You will not be funded in advance for a direction you have not yet committed to. But the moment the commitment is made, the real one, not the performance of one, The resources will begin to align in ways that will be difficult to explain to people who were not watching the process. You went in wondering if you were supported. You are coming out knowing that the support was always calibrated to the assignment, not to your fear. You went in asking whether the provision would come. You are coming out understanding that the provision was waiting for you to step, not for you to figure it out first. I want to tell you about someone. About 9 months ago, a person stood where you are standing right now. Same restlessness, same sense of threshold, same weight of a season that had lasted longer than he thought he could carry. He made a decision, not a dramatic one, not a public announcement, a quiet, internal decision. He practiced what I would call strategic stillness. He stopped explaining his process to people who could not understand it. He pulled back from the noise and gave himself a period of intentional focus on what he was actually being called toward. On day 38 of that period, a company he had never contacted, never sent a resume to, never even researched, reached out to him. The offer that came was not just employment. It was confirmation. He said afterward that the shift was not in his circumstances first. It was in his frequency. The circumstances followed the frequency. That sequence matters. Now, before I tell you the final piece of this, the piece that I believe is the real reason you are here today, I want to ask you something directly. How long have you been waiting to be told that what you have been doing is enough? Not perfect, not impressive, not by the world's metrics. Just enough. Enough to be seen, enough to be answered. Enough to move the hand of the one who holds everything. I am asking because what comes next requires you to actually receive it, not just hear it. And receiving it requires that you put down, just for a moment, the argument you have been carrying against yourself. This is the thing I have been building toward. This is the piece that recontextualizes everything I have said until now. God did not stand up because the situation demanded it. God did not stand up because a cosmic threshold was crossed, or because a quota of suffering was finally met. I hear the Father saying over you now, I stood because you called it forth, not with words, not with a perfect prayer or a performed act of faith, with the weight of who you are, with the accumulated faithfulness of 1,000 small choices made in the dark, with the cost of what you have been becoming. That is what moved me, not your performance. You. And the angels went silent because they understood what that standing meant. They understood that something was about to be released that could not be taken back. A declaration, a decree, an irreversible yes spoken over the life of someone who had been faithful enough, long enough, quietly enough to receive it. Now I want to speak directly to something that may be stirring in you as you hear this. There is a voice, you may be feeling it even now, a voice that says, this is too large for you, that you are not the kind of person things like this happen to, that the gap between where you are and where this message points is too wide. I want you to hear me when I say this. That voice is not wisdom. It is not discernment. It is the last defense of a season that is ending. Worthiness is not the prerequisite for divine attention. Faithfulness is. And the evidence of your faithfulness is written in every page of the season you just walked through. And for those who feel not just unworthy but afraid of what breakthrough actually means, afraid that visibility will expose something, afraid that stepping into what is being declared will reveal you to be less than the declaration that fear is not a red flag, it is a green one. Those who stepped into large things without any fear were not braver than you. They simply did not yet understand the weight of what they were carrying. Your fear is the evidence that you do. It is the mark of someone ready to carry something real. You are allowed to receive this. You are allowed to step into what has been prepared without first earning the right to stand there. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that needed permission from smaller voices. You are allowed to protect what is being built in you without explaining the construction to everyone who asks. You are allowed to move at the pace of the calling rather than the pace of other people's comfort. You are allowed to be changed by what you have been through and to stop pretending you are the same person who entered this season. And you do not owe anyone an apology for becoming who you were always intended to be. Now let me tell you who that is. You are a light bearer, which means that when you walk into confused spaces, something shifts. Not because of what you say, because of what you carry. The light in you is not a performance, it is a presence. And it has been active even in the seasons when you could not feel it. You are a seer, which means that what you perceive about people and situations, those readings that arrive before you, have enough information to justify them. That is not imagination, that is accuracy. The sensitivity that has sometimes felt like a burden is actually the sharpest instrument you have been given. Do not dull it to make other people comfortable. You are a spiritual warrior, not because you are aggressive, because you hold ground. You do not collapse under pressure. And the history of this season, the fact that you are still here, still moving, still reaching towards something true, that history is the proof. You are the voice. The silence you have been in was not permanent. It was preparation. What was being formed in the quiet is something that, when it finally speaks, will reach people that nothing else could have reached. Your voice carries the weight of what you survived. That weight is not a liability, it is the authority. And you are a cycle breaker, which means that certain patterns, generational ones, relational ones, the ones that have shown up in your family line or your own story more than once, they end with you. Not because you declared them away in a single moment, but because of who you have been choosing to become consistently. Over the length of this long and costly season, something is settled that was not settled before. And now comes the question of what to do with it. Let me speak to what comes next. Because declaration without activation is incomplete. There is a practice I want to give you. I call it the throne room posture. And it is not a complicated thing. It is this. Once a day, in whatever ordinary moment you find yourself in, driving, resting, in the space between tasks, you speak these words to yourself. Not out loud necessarily, but with intention in your mind. You say, I am seen, I am answered, I am moving with the current, not against it. That is it. 3 statements, not a formula. A posture. A way of positioning yourself in relationship to what has been declared. The eagle does not fight the air. It positions itself in the current. This is how you position yourself in the declaration. The second practice I want to give you is what I call the frequency audit. And this one is less about speaking and more about noticing. For the next season, not forever, but for the season you are in, begin to pay attention to 2 categories of experience. What drains you and what restores you. Not in a vague general sense. Specifically, which conversations leave you lighter and which ones leave you empty? Which environments expand your sense of what is possible and which ones collapse it? Which commitments feel like they belong to your next chapter and which ones feel like obligations that belong to a chapter that has already closed? The audit is not about making dramatic changes immediately. It is about developing the discernment to know which current you are in. Because the chosen one who is being elevated cannot afford to spend the majority of their energy in currents that run opposite to their calling. You are not managing a life anymore. You are stewarding an assignment. And that distinction changes how you allocate everything. Now I want to come back to something I mentioned earlier. The frequency I told you I would return to. The genius state. I want to spend a few minutes here because I believe this is going to connect something for you that has not yet had language. You were born with a particular kind of brain, not ordinary, not average. The people I am speaking to in this season, the ones who have been walking the kind of journey I have described today, they were born with something that neuroscientists now have a name for, a brainwave pattern, the highest frequency the human mind can produce. It is called the gamma wave. And Dr. Robert Lake, a neuroscientist with 34 years of research and studies, conducted through institutions including MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and Berkeley, has documented something about this wave that I want you to understand. He calls it God's original frequency, the brainwave that, in children, produces the states we associate with genius, rapid learning, deep intuition, creative insight, the sense that everything is connected and flowing. If you think back to a time in your life, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in a season that felt unusually alive, when ideas came easily, when things fell into place without forcing, when you felt like you were operating at a level you could not fully explain, that was the gamma state. That was your brain at its designed frequency. But here is what Dr. Lake documented, and what he calls the decline effect. From around age 7, the modern world begins to suppress that frequency. The structure of the education system, the pace of adult life, the chronic stress that becomes normalized, all of it pushes the brain into lower survival frequencies, not because of any moral failing, because the system was not built for your kind of mind. The same mind that made you feel extraordinary as a child is the one that has been operating under suppression as an adult. Dr. Lake has dedicated his career to what he has called a larger body of work protocols and tools for recalibrating the brain back toward its original frequency. Part of that work includes something he calls the youthful brain research into what happens when the suppression is reversed. And what he found across thousands of subjects is this: when the gamma frequency is reactivated, the synchronicities return, the intuition sharpens, the things that used to flow begin to flow again. The gap between who you were as a child and who you have become as an adult, that gap begins to close. I want to tell you about someone who experienced this. A woman who had spent years pursuing every spiritual practice available to her, meditation, retreats, healing modalities, every door she could find. And she felt something in each of them, but never the full arrival, never the sense of deep, sustained connection she was looking for. She came across this technology with very low expectations. She had already tried so much. 2 weeks later, she used one word to describe what had changed: synchronicities. The universe, she said, had begun to speak to her in a language she finally understood. Not louder, just finally legible. She mentioned later, almost in passing, that she had also started something called neuroactive as part of the extended process. But she said the shift began in those first 2 weeks with the foundational piece. That foundational piece is what I want to tell you about now. Dr. Lake compressed his technology into something he calls the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute audio track. You listen through headphones, you allow your attention to rest, and the technology does what years of conventional practice attempts to do. Through willpower alone, it directly entrains the brain to the gamma frequency, not through effort, through sound. Through the same principle that makes a tuning fork cause another tuning fork across the room to vibrate at the same pitch. This is not meditation. It does not require you to clear your mind or achieve a particular state before it works. It requires only that you listen. The brain, presented with the right frequency, responds. That is not a claim. That is a documented, measurable, repeatable outcome across 18,366 people who have used this tool. Now, I want to speak to something you may be thinking. If you have tried things before and felt the disappointment of a tool that promised more than it delivered, I understand that hesitation. That hesitation is the mark of someone who takes their own growth seriously. But I want to make a distinction. The tools you may have tried before, the practices, the meditations, the approaches, they work on the surface level, asking the brain to change itself from within through sustained effort. Brain entrainment works at the frequency level, from the outside in. The mechanism is entirely different. This is not one more thing on the same list. It is a different list. And for those for whom cost is a real consideration, I want to be honest with you. The tools that can achieve what this technology achieves through conventional means would cost you $300 an hour for biofeedback therapy, or $7,000 for the equipment to do it at home. Dr. Lake compressed all of it into a 7-minute file and made it available for $39, not $49, which is the standard price. $39, specifically for people who arrive at this message because his stated reason for creating this was not commercial. It was to reach the people who needed it, the people who were ready. People like the one I have been describing to you for the past hour. When you access it through the link in the description and the pinned comment, you also receive 4 additional resources at no extra cost: an audio track designed for the next generation, the book that preceded a cultural phenomenon about the nature of human potential, a guided visualization across the 4 areas of life that matter most, and a simple reference guide for the 5 daily habits that most consistently support the trajectory you are stepping into. And if you use it and feel nothing, not a shift, not a difference, not any change in the way your mind moves through your days, you receive every dollar back. No conditions, no limitations on how many times you have used it before requesting the return. The only risk in this equation is not trying it. I need to say one more thing here, and I say it because I have seen what happens when people seek out the wrong version of something real. There are imitations that carry the name Genius Song, but do not carry the technology. Audio files that use the name, but contain none of the entrainment structure that Dr. Lake built over 34 years of research. If you find it on Amazon, on a streaming platform, through a search result that leads somewhere other than the link below, that is not the original. The only way to receive what I have described, with the full frequency architecture, the 4 bonuses, and the unconditional guarantee, is through the link in the description and the pinned comment. Nowhere else. I say that not to create urgency, but to protect what you are about to invest in yourself. If your spirit resonates with what I have described, if something in you recognizes this as the next step, not as a purchase, but as a decision that belongs to this season, the information is waiting for you below. Investigate only when you feel called to. The door is open. Now let me close this in the way this message deserves to be closed. I want to do something with you before we finish. Not a physical exercise, a mental one. One that only takes a few seconds, but that I believe will anchor everything you have received today in a way that words alone cannot. In your mind, wherever you are right now, whatever you are doing, I want you to imagine a space of complete silence. Not the silence of being forgotten, not the silence of being overlooked or passed by. The silence of being so fully, completely, specifically seen that the entire room stopped because your presence warranted it. The silence of the angels, that silence. The one that was not about absence but about honor. Let yourself sit in that silence for just a moment. Let the weight of what was declared over you today settle. Not as an idea you heard, as something that belongs to you, because it does. Now let me speak to who you are one more time, because I want you to carry this out of this moment with you. You are the light bearer, and your light was never lost. It was being protected. It will illuminate things in the next chapter that could not have been illuminated by a version of you that had not walked through this season. You are the voice, and your silence was never emptiness. It was preparation. What was formed in the quiet is going to speak to people that nothing else could reach. Your words, when they come, will carry the weight of what you survived. That weight is not a liability. It is the authority. You are the cycle breaker, and what ends with you has no power over what follows. The patterns that tried to define your story do not get to write the ending. You have already decided that. Every choice you made in this long season confirmed it. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. Now I want to speak something over you. Not as my words, These are the words being placed on my heart for the one who stayed. May the weight you have been carrying begin to lift from this moment forward, not all at once, but steadily. The way the sky lightens before the sun is visible. May the clarity you have been waiting for arrive in a form you recognize, not as a plan handed to you, but as a pull you cannot ignore, arriving in the most unexpectedly perfect moment. May the connections that belong to your next chapter find you before you have to search for them. May the people who are meant to stand beside you in this season be drawn by the same current that brought you here today. And I hear the Father saying, over the one who stayed until the end, you thought your persistence was ordinary. I want you to know from the place where everything is seen and nothing is wasted, it was not ordinary. It was the answer to a question I asked about you before you were born, and the answer was yes. It has always been yes. What I am releasing into your life now is not a reward for your suffering. It is the next chapter of a story I have been writing with more care than you have yet seen. You are not at the end of something. You are at the beginning. And what begins now, what begins from this moment, in this season, with this activation, is something that your future self will return to and call the turning point. I want to close with what started this conversation. God stood up from his throne. Because of you, the angels went silent. Not because something terrible was approaching, but because something extraordinary was being answered. Now you know what the silence was. Now you know what it means. And now you know what to do with it. The silence has been broken. The movement has begun. There is more to this journey than what today has uncovered, and the one who walks it faithfully will find that what I have called destiny's embrace will make itself known in ways that today could only point toward. But today is enough. What was declared today is enough. You are enough. Go in the authority of what has been spoken over your life. And for those who felt the resonance of the activation tool I described, the information is in the description below and in the pinned comment. Let your spirit lead. Take your time. But do not let time take the decision from you. I will see you in the next chapter of this journey. Go well, chosen one.